order of business that we have is we need to elect a chairperson for the committee. And so we'll open up nominations for that.
I'd like to nominate you, Kate.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Amy. And all those in favor?
Aye.
I apologize. I should have asked if there were any other nominations first. Okay, and then for co-chair, do we have any nominations for co-chair?
I'd like to nominate Amy.
Okay, and I will second that. Any other nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Amy is the co-chair. Very good. So, now I think we need to start a conversation around the table here. I have a couple thoughts about what I would like to see this committee working on. But obviously that's a group decision to decide, sort of what direction we're going to move in. My thought right now after the budget passing through the Board of Ed last night is that we need to, center our efforts on outreach about what the budget contains and what the process is for the budget now that it's been approved by the Board of Ed, where it goes from here and what the process is and what we ultimately end up with as a board from the city once their decision is made. So that's my thought as far as, the kind of information we need to be imparting to the public right now. But I'm certainly open to conversation about other things that folks might want to do with our time here.
If it's okay, Kate, I'd like to also suggest, in addition to the budget timetable and to answer your questions, what I would like to do is to, and the theme of your, or the point of your agenda tonight is the community outreach, is to try to work together to simplify the budget so that collectively the people on the board can go out into the community and to advocate for this budget. And as I've expressed in my workshops, I work with Courtney to keep it on the simple side, and we can further reduce the complexities of this to perhaps more layman terms. And Courtney and I and Kevin had also discussed about doing a little bit more in terms of the presentation that we got the other night from Courtney. So that was more personalized by having videos or conversations of staff members or students that can comment on some of the proposals we have and what the effect would be if it doesn't happen. So again, I go back to the word humanize and people understand what the impact it is. Mm-hmm. If we get a good feel for the numbers and are able to explain these numbers in layman's terms so that, we have a comfort with it, then we may be able to go out into a team. And with the inroads that Dr. Mead and Kevin has made in the community, they may be able to set up appointments as well as, Gladys and her affiliation with the church and other organizations. We may be able to go out, we as the board, not just only this group, because it's going to be a large undertaking, go out and advocate for the budget. I think we picked up momentum in the last 2 years on the part of the public, in particular the strength of the teachers union starting to come forward and say, support the funding to the Board of Ed. I think we have to keep that momentum up. And I try to have pointed out last night with Kara, again, reiterating that although the funding is a lot of money, it's unfortunate, but historically, we've been cut and it's caught up with us. And if we are going to embark on more sophisticated programs, such as the POG or the academy or anything else we want to do, we can ill afford not to be funded. If we're not funded and we can't do the other stuff, then there's really no sense in moving forward with the the other programs, is my feeling, is because it'll be done very haphazardly. It would be like getting a high school as we did, and we couldn't afford to open up the high school. And we had to do it over a period of years, which was really kind of stupid. So,
Yeah.
To that part, I think the first thing to do is to try to get the budget. And I know it's boring, to people to go through numbers, but again, if we can get it so that it's simplified, so that we can convey the emotion that Augusto conveyed in his presentation to what Kevin had mentioned on the social part. It gives us a feel that we know what we're talking about. So when we're out presenting this, people see that it comes from the heart, and we have passion for this stuff, not just reading off a number from a sheet and saying we need, X number of dollars for PSYOP coaches, et cetera, et cetera. I think the first thing to do is to, come up with some sort of a program to further refine the presentation that Courtney did. And, again, Courtney and Kevin had conversations about possibility of doing that. And then, you putting together a proposal to the full board to round up the troops to see how we can go ahead and get some troops to go out and to canvass the public. We've got a presentation to the citywide PTO, which has a large audience. So a lot of things we can do. It's just a matter of having it organized, and when it comes, be prepared when these particular meetings come up, so that we're engaged as a team and a group to be able to make the presentation. And it's not only with the budget, because when the budget ends, there are other things, and your subject of community outreach falls into exactly what Dr. Mead and Kevin have been doing over the course of the last number of years. So that's important, whether it's again going out and explaining the portrait of the graduate, and at some later date go out and support what the concept of the academy is, because that's a little bit confusing. So again, it's most important to get out into the community. And over the years that I've been on the board, that has been one of the slowest inroads that we've had. And if it wasn't for Dr. Mead, the Hispanic community basically would be lost, because she took a tremendous undertaking to have them have confidence and trust in her, so that there could be the relationship with the Board of Ed. So we've come a long way. It's taken us a long time. Now we got to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Well, and I think you make a good point, Rich. In particular right now, I think there are a lot of parents and families that are paying much closer attention than they normally might be to what's going on with the schools. And that presents us with an opportunity to work on that relationship building that you're alluding to. I think all of us have heard the frustration that this pandemic has created for folks, and it's exacerbated a lot of situations that we've been dealing with in the schools for a while. And now I think, with more folks watching the meetings at home because they're able to, attend virtually, and hear about more what's going on. I think, to your point, you mentioned that the citywide PTO has a broad audience, and that there are certain groups that are already kind of doing this kind of work, but we need to put this in language that is easily digestible. And one of the things that happens at our board meetings is that we're sort of speaking a language that doesn't always resonate with everybody who's listening, because this is language that we all hear from either our administrators, who are education experts, or language that we've been exposed to after a certain amount of time on the board. So we're familiar with it when we use like the NEASC report, and we talk about that. We talk about the TFAL evaluations. We talk about all these different things that for us are very, we kind of understand them already, but people who are listening to that are not going to process it the same way. And so I think in that sense, maybe our approach with the community relations is going to be it's going to look and sound a little bit different, than what our approach is as board members around the table. So
I think to your point, you mentioned NIAS, and certainly Kevin and Dr. Mead can speak to this. The public may not know what NIAS is, but the net effect is if we don't get the accreditation, then there is a specific problem with the graduation of these kids graduating from a high school,
right,
have an accreditation, and
their diploma is worthless. I mean, I think that's something that is a very easy sentence, you know, to get to resonate with people. You know, if you find out that your kid has worked this hard to get through high school and their diploma doesn't count for anything or doesn't hold any weight, that's a very easy concept for folks to understand. And I think that's the kind of, you know, that's exactly the kind of approach I'm talking about, Rich, where we bring this down to, you know, an understanding of what the consequence is for people who are in the system.
So, you know, I firmly believe, and I've always believed, that everything we do in the school district affects your child. Unfortunately, we see that if we move a bus stop, you know, pre-COVID, we had a boardroom filled with hundreds of parents. We talk about $100 million budget and you get a half a dozen people there.
Yeah.
But we've got to be able to demonstrate what the impact, what the effect is on these.
Yeah.
And I keep using the examples about guidance counselors. And a good part of this is that how much of this is in the budget. You know, we had questions, had conversations with Amy today, and it came up yesterday at the meeting as to the requests that we're asking. You know, I firmly believe, and not firmly believe, I do believe that our responsibility is to put forth a budget that supports the movement ahead of the kids in Danbury. It's up to the mayor of the city to juggle our request relative to the balance of the city, and therefore that's his job, that's his problem. But it's our job to advocate for what's going to move us ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And as Kara made very important, we can ill afford to take less. And if we don't get it from the city, then it's the state we have to make these challenges to, and our local representatives. You know, we can't lose the momentum that we've had the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think
and it can't just be our momentum, Rich. To that end, it's got to be momentum that comes out of the community, whether we're pursuing that at the city level, whether we're pursuing that at the state level, whether we're pursuing it, you know, for, you know, just a community effort. The folks who need to be vocal about this and to participate in this more are, you know, the families who are going to be impacted by it and the students who are going to be impacted by it. You know, the teachers frequently show up for the budget meetings and the budget hearings, and you know, they certainly have a vested interest. But this is a service we're providing to the community, and I think, you know, we have two tasks ahead of us. I often want to appeal mostly to the families, I think, you know, of the students who are in our school system, because I think those are folks who have a you know, their own interest in it. But this is a broader discussion too within the community about why we need to support healthy schools, because that's, you know, and we've had this conversation. I've had this conversation with a number of you that impacts the housing market and what the value of your property is going to look like, and it also impacts what your leadership for your community is going to look like. And that's something that I think is, you know, when we're talking about the long-term strength and health of Danbury, you know, having good, strong public schools are a big part of that equation. We're obviously in a situation right now where, you know, we've sort of been through a period of money being, you know, pulled away from our work here. We can't make it up in a year. We can't make it up in 2 years. We probably can't even make it up in 5 years. I think, you know, to the point you're making, we just need to put forth our best effort to advocate for the money we're asking for this year, because we're, you know, Courtney and the rest of the administrative staff have put it into context for us, right? They've said, these are the things we need. This is why we need them. This is how we're planning for bringing our schools to where they need to be to support the community, the community of students that we have. And so we just need to follow that lead that they're offering us with, you know, providing that context to all of the families in our community and to all of our community members.
I don't mean to dominate the conversation, so I'd like to get the opinions of Kevin and Dr. Mead, but we also have to explain to the public the effect of the CARES 2 money, because the layman, they hear that Danbury got $10.1 million. And simplistically, if they're asking for $14 million, they can say, well, the differential is just $4 million that the city has to do it. So we have to be able to explain the logistics as to the restrictions on what the CARES money is. And if we use the $10 million toward the $14 million, then next year we're going to be in one deep hole.
That's a good point, Rich.
That's another. So what I'm saying is that our troops, our emissaries that go out there should be involved in this and have every bit of information to be able to sell. There's like a salesperson. You want to go out there, you want to sell this particular product. You got to know how the product is manufactured. You got to know what it's going to do. You have to have a belief in it if you want to make the sale and close the sale. So I think there's a lot of training on our part that we have to do to get our group together. And then we get a marching order from Kevin and Dr. Mead, and they say, okay, go out there. We schedule this, and they can take care of certain things. That's the way I envision it. But it's a team effort. We just can't leave it on to Dr. Sala have one video thing and put it on YouTube.
Well, and we're not doing our work. We're not doing our work if that's the way it ends up. So I'm curious from Joe and Amy, and certainly you too as well, Gladys, what your thoughts are and sort of where you're approaching the committee work.
I'll go. I totally agree with what you're both saying. And being a person who's not really a numbers person, and yet the way the budget was presented this time and last year it was like this too, with the PowerPoint presentation and then all the extra information we had from each person in the categories. I thought it was excellent, and I was able to get it and understand it. And I would like nothing better. I like going out and talking to groups of people. It's just one of the things I do well, but I need something to take with me. And unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese. That's a real drawback. But if I had somebody with me, I've got the boldness, but I need to have the information written up, and with just all these, like Rich said, simply, but the bullet points, there's quite a few things here. At least 5 points that are really important. The NEASC, so important, the accreditation. I go back to Augusto and the PSYOP coaches and the whole, bilingual piece. Also, of course, I'm all for the behavior specialists who need to help us out now until, we get our kids back to a place where they're in a good way after what's happened in the last year, and teachers, families, everybody. So there's like 5 or 6 points that could be easily made. And to your point too, Kate, I've been on one of those PTO meetings at Broadview where there were 27 parents on it. I've never been to a PTO meeting with 27 parents, 5, but not 27. So this isn't a real an opportunity to have more people hear us as far as the parents go. And I know Ann and Kevin do a great job with community outreach, and there's just lots of places we can take this. But again, we're kind of racing against the clock. We kind of have to let people know. I don't know when Danbury Day is. Everything's kind of turned upside down. Hopefully it's going to straighten out more this year, but because it's the city, but it's a state also that has to hear our story, from us, from families. It would mean a lot more coming from families.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at. I'm ready, willing, roll up my sleeves. I can write. I like writing, but we just have to simplify it and make it really understandable and in a hurry.
Yes, yes.
Can I respond to that real quickly? Because you just get me really excited about something that we used to do at in New York City, which is we called it a one-pager. So, if there's a way to be really pithy, and very visual and translated, you know, that we can get those talking points down to a single page that we can just flyer the community. That might be something that would be really helpful, you know, in this short time frame that we have, with like links to refer them for more info and how to get in touch with us and things like that. Because then you would have that translated doc and we could just flyer it all over the place. It doesn't have to be a whole PowerPoint where they sit for 40 minutes, you know.
No, the simple.
I had just put in the, like, you like read my mind, Courtney, about that one sheet, because that was, I had it like on my screen ready to like
Oh, look at that,
recommend
yeah.
it. I found this really cool graphic which just had like, yeah, that's it right there. And it
Yeah.
just,
Oh, cool.
it pops, and it takes what I was going to say is we need to like pick 5 key parts of this budget that we know that the public would understand. Like, we know what state funding is, we know what city funding is, we know what an increase is, like those types of things, and just get it in like a one pager, like Courtney was saying, in front of
Yeah.
people, and circulate that somehow. I think, because I think it's a lot easier for people to understand what you won't get than what you will get.
Mm.
And I think there's value in that, and I think that's a value that is seldom exploited, because you're what is it? It's like you're appealing to emotion almost, which
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
is not always the best thing, but sometimes the right thing. And that's kind of where I'm at.
And look at, you know,
I just took a copy of it.
you know,
I
so,
like the one page, perfect.
you know, we had the effect, hi, Dr. Sal, of the tax impact, you know, which were, this is.
Rich, we can't hear you.
Oh, shit.
Hi, Dr. Sal.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Dr. Sarah.
We have
Hi.
of the tax, the property tax impact, which is, you know, thanks to Al, who brought it to our attention, you know, we can talk about that and say what you're going to get for your money. So, you know, these are all great ideas. That one page, you know, equates to the elevator speech, but you got to be able to talk around the details as well and know the infrastructure, but you don't want to bore them to, you know, to
Yeah.
get. So, and it's the legislators too, we should try to get, you know, if we can get a meeting with them, make a special presentation to them and get them on board. So perhaps they could do something for us in the state, or at least be on our side to advocate and get some funds for us. But
I think so. Dr. Sal, how you doing?
Good.
Are you did you want to, I don't know if you wanted to jump in, you're certainly more than welcome to do so.
Jump
We're
in.
just talking over, you know, sort of what we're going to do strategy wise with the
yeah.
community relations,
For the
how
budget.
that's going to relate to the budget. Yeah.
Well, I think Courtney was with me today. We had a little powwow with the city. I mean, the picture painted is, we know you have a need, but the economy is really tough in Danbury. Things are very difficult for city workers to get out and collect revenue. And I didn't get a very good feeling. You know, I think there's a,
Yeah.
let's say there's a willingness to work with us, but you know, to what extent, I don't know. So, you know, I hear you guys talking about going, talking to everybody. I think what you need is really people at the council meeting getting up and speaking. I don't think your legislator is going to help you much. The governor has put his budget out. You know, the really rich, the bottom line is with the city. And I think the picture I got painted was, we want to help, but it's a difficult time. I mean, and you know, I've heard it from year in, year out. So I don't, you know, if you want my suggestion, I don't say we raid City Hall. People just get up and say, without these funds, this is what happens, or with these funds, this is who we can service. I think there's a willingness on the city, everyone, they're looking at your $10 million.
I think, and that's why I think there's more value in putting out what we won't get than what we will get.
right.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. We've got, Sal, we've got to come up with a prior to you coming, I said to the layman who thinks we get the 10 million can subtract it from the 14 and basically we're home free. But we've got to be able to, you know, realistically say that of the 10 million, you know, to be creative, we can do this because of this, it affects maybe the one-time costs. However, if we apply the entire 10 million to this, then we have a huge problem next year. So that perhaps our ask reduces from 14 million to, let's say, 14 to 12 million. I'm just making up numbers. But the other thing is, on the horizon, we're proposing a $90 million bond plus or minus. If we don't get this money, I say take the bond and burn it. Because why are you going to build a building if we can't support the building, or you're going to have a structure and it's going to lie vacant for 5 years? And all the work we're doing in the portrait of graduate that needs the infrastructure for the academic people to be trained to help this stuff. If we can't do it, then we put that on hold. And so we just move ahead and we become a school district that just operates on maintenance. You just turn the lights on and it's the same old thing. We don't move ahead and your academic grades go down. I think people have to be aware of what's going to happen. The fact that there's no money available, somebody's going to be able to have to pony up and understand what the consequences are of not giving us this money. I don't want to say it's scare tactics, but I understand the problems out there. I understand it's COVID has knocked the hell out of things. On the other hand, life goes on. So
I think COVID presents an opportunity for us, Rich, to talk about some of those consequences that we're already seeing. That also presents an opening to have a conversation about potential consequences that we may see if we don't step in and do this work. So I hear the passion that you're expressing about making sure people understand what they're getting when they either opt for the cheap version of the product or the more expensive version of the product. I think everybody can appreciate that, the contrast and the quality, even if they are ultimately, from their own perspective, making a decision based from a purely financial position. And I think more people in our community want the quality education, the one that is going to have the supports for their kids, especially now after having been through a really difficult and traumatic school year where, the resources that they've come to rely on that the schools have provided for them have not been available. I think that's an eye-opening experience that many people have been through. And though right now they may be directing their frustration, at our schools, because they are in an untenable position, the reality is that awareness is something that they have now that they didn't have before. So that's something that I think we can have that conversation with people and encourage them to be aware of the consequences that they may face down the line if we don't make a better choice for our community. I don't want to. I don't know, Joe. Thank you for posting that graphic up. Gladys, I don't want to skip out on you if you had anything that you wanted to say about sort of the direction we're moving in and how we're going to move forward.
I think that the Community Relation Committee um, can do a lot in our community as far as right now putting the budget information out. I certainly like the one pager, and it's going to be very important how this group can pull, this committee can pull the families together that really doesn't understand the type of language that's being taught or being said at a board meeting, and to say to them, okay, we are asking for um, $10,000 for these two positions, and then you lay those two positions out, so they can understand that one of those positions might affect my child, okay? And it could be, our counselor. So many things have been cut over the years, and I understand that we need to start putting back, because if we don't start putting back, we're gonna keep falling deeper and deeper in the hole, and the money is never gonna be there uh, to for them to say we're gonna give you everything that you're asking for. But we need to stop at some point and say, okay, who is it that we can get to help support this budget. Will you come out on this particular day, voice your opinion, and support our budget? Because we can't keep managing in the schools the way they are and just look at, over the last couple of years, you know, the city has really cut us what $4 million. People need to know that they're thinking that each year we're getting a raise and we're getting a raise, but how it's presented to uh, the community and the way it's presented is it looks like they are giving us money, they are, but they're not giving us nothing to really jump up, because we are in turn come back to the table and look at those things what we can cut and say, okay, the high school asked for 2 counselors, we're going to have to give them 1 because we can't afford to give them 2. So I think when people start realizing that, you know, and just put the information out there, start working, putting the information out there now, and start moving this committee forward. And then after the budget season, then there's other things that this committee can do. But right now, I think we should be focused on getting the community involved in the budget process and understanding, though it could be 6 PowerPoint, it could be 8 PowerPoint, but something very simple and clear that they can understand and say, okay, I would support it.
Kate and everyone there, some places can argue less money, less teachers, larger class sizes. Well, you don't have the space and you already have large classes. So when people say, well, what's going to happen when you don't have these things, the things that will fall to the wayside is really the attention that the youngsters are going to need. And when you looked at the budget, you heard Courtney last night talk about the support personnel. You heard Kara and Kelly talk about that. I think that's the emotional truth, because we don't have room, and your classes are big. They're going to get bigger. I said a few years ago, my fear is that we look like the big cities. You're going to have 30 in a classroom. Well, guys, we're pretty close. We're 25. Kevin keeps trying to keep them down, and it's a fight. They're 26, 28. So I guess as I'm reflecting, we talk about the loss of the support of the youngsters, social emotionally, in this budget. There's a lot here for that. I think that's an appealing part. And that's the truth of the matter. That's what will go away. I don't know what else, because, you can just make the classes are big already.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really direct point. And I think it does have a very strong emotional appeal. I mean, one of the things that for me stood out with this budget was the discussion about the climate specialists, which Kevin, I really appreciated that, your ability to translate that during the meeting so that people understood. But, I can recall sitting at board meetings where we had, parents who stood up to talk about some of the conflicts that were spilling over from the community into our schools, and being very concerned about the safety of their kids, and very concerned about the way that the discipline piece of this was being handled. Those climate specialists are, our schools, our administration coming up with the necessary support we need in order to address something that everybody, including those parents coming to those meetings, acknowledges is an obstacle for our schools and for our kids. So that to me is the kind of thing where, you look at that and it says climate specialist. Well, maybe we need to, spend a panel breaking down what that is and talk about it in the context of what we've heard from the public, what we've heard people come into our meetings to talk about. And we're hear you, and we want to give you this, and we're trying to put this solution in place, and we need your support to make that happen. Those, I think, when you talk about, and Anne, I saw your notes here in the chat. Thank you. I do agree that we have to, we have to be prepared to address some of the things that I think are going to come up in conversation. The school buildings themselves were closed for a long time, and people have, you're correct, they have wrongly assumed that we've been saving money because of that. The reality is that in some ways our costs actually went up. depending on, what we were trying to accomplish. And I think that, you're talking about, the freshman sports, and, that's another piece, that's something that's meaningful to people, that people came into our meetings to talk about. That's important to them. So let's meet the community where it is, and let's focus on the things that are important to them, even if they don't necessarily align with what we think, need to be highlighted points, because the goal is is building a relationship with the community and gaining their support. That's the goal. And there are lots of different ways to do that. And I think over time, we're going to be given the opportunity to educate them about why the things that we think are important, are being discussed. But in the immediate, let's choose the things that we know are already motivating them to participate.
City has a realization of that, Kate, and would like to help. And I think we just need to, as you just said, get those points that resonates with the citizens, so that they can agree that this is something that's very important. I mean, their willingness to work with us. Everybody's under a strain.
Yep.
I get that, and I think your job, my job, is just to present to the public what our kids need to learn and to be safe and
Yep.
to be supportive. I mean, it's that simple. And I think your budget it's not an extravagant budget.
No.
It's one that will do some of that.
Yeah.
Not to the extent that you need. Rich always says, well, is that enough? No, but it's a start. And
Yeah. And it's hard because you don't want to be shamed to not ask for what you need, and that's what tended to happen sometimes.
It's like I just feel like district, and this is what makes me feel so bad, is we've been operating on a presumption that we're not going to get what we want anyway. Therefore, let's not ask for a lot, and that is just, there's just so many things just morally wrong with feeling that way. And it breaks my heart for you guys crafting the darn thing, and it's.
Hey, sure. We've invited Ann and Kevin. I'd like them, to chime in and give us their opinion in terms of what they've heard and how they can direct us to facilitate, to get this thing going.
Well, I think, and I hear you, Mr. Stanley. I think I agree with you, and I'd like to hear from them anyway, but I do want to make sure. So for this initial meeting, I think we can talk about the methods of doing the outreach, but I think our first step has to be, what are the things that we want to put together to do that outreach. We need to, if we're going to come up with a one pager, and we can talk about that, or we're going to come up with a social media campaign, we can talk about that. We need to talk about the specific points that I think are going to reach people in order to make a move on the next step. So that is, I just don't want to lose the thread of that conversation, as we move forward.
All right, fine. It's a good point. To your point, if you reduce it to one page, then I'd say, my thing would be to talk to the hot button items. A number of years ago, we were making a pitch to legislators. Dr. Sal had selected 3 or 5 things that we put on a little card that was like a 30-second elevator speech. This would be more than that. So if we could agree on what the hot button items are and the pros and cons of those things relative to the budget, we focus on that rather than the total $14 million, which becomes a little bit more complex. Again, in addition to that, let's take that as a first start. If the general consensus is that would be a good way to go, then we just figure out which are the hot button items and start to get educated on that stuff to do it. And we can get that as a starting point, as to say, okay, the first meeting, we've at least, come up with a particular action plan to do something.
Yeah. And I think, this is the hard part, right? Is, in this initial brainstorming, trying to narrow down the $14 million that we're looking for, which is a substantial amount of money, and we're asking for a substantial number of things. We've got to figure out what are the ones that are going to resonate the most with the folks that we're going to be talking to. And that may look a little bit different depending on what our audience who's in our audience. So I think that that's something that we ought to consider as well, you know, depending on how we're going to do, you know, the different forms of outreach. And obviously you're working with, you work a lot with the Hispanic and Latino members in our community. So what we put together, you know, to present to that audience might look a little bit different than, say, what we're taking to the citywide PTO, or if we're trying to reach out to some of the kids who are involved with sports. You know, they're going to be they're going to look a little bit different, but I think it would be helpful for us to go through the budget and look at, you know, what each of us thinks is, you know, the most, the pieces that will most resonate in our community.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, you know, for the other pieces of this, you know, it seems like everybody's kind of on board with the one-page document. And I think that that's good in terms of physical distribution of a piece of paper, but if it's designed well, it's also really good for a social media presence. You know, and I think that there are different ways that we can, you know, kind of push that messaging. So does that sound okay to everybody?
I think we need help as to what, as you know, the one page and what I call the hot button items are. You know, I think that's important. You know, the entire budget's important, but we're going to have to take a lead and, you know, put our best foot forward to say which will have more of an impact and to get across. You know, maybe, and there may be different variations of one pages too that we could do. But if we can start with that, you know, that's fine. I just don't. And I think to that point, it would be, you know, Ann and Dr. Sal and Kevin to tell us what they feel is the best shot, you know, to for subject matter to put across to capture attention. You know, that's really going to be an attention grabber. And once you get them there, then you can go on and support the rest. But
Rich, I did ask Mr. Miller Sterling to work with us and get some vignettes, you know, as we did last year, of actually the kid or a teacher, some parents making a comment when you figure those areas. So it's kind of more authentic. And that just would, you know, just send our message, not just from you or me, but from, you know, our students and parents.
Yeah.
As part of the presentation. So he was going to go through his archives and see if he could find some stuff that pre-made and we can kind of insert into the segments of the budget. So we are working on that for you, and I'll check with you.
Thank you.
Maybe you could align it with whatever those talking points, you know, or like the when Dr. Sal said vignettes, but like from a marketing campaign, it would be really cool if you decide those, you know, hot button items you're going to touch, and then how that looks visually, and then align like the comments with that, so it's all streamlined. That might be cool.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I'd like to hear, can we hear from Ann? And
Ann and Kevin.
So if Kevin wants to go first, that would be great. I'm actually taking what you're talking about. I'm putting into a grid. We heard families during COVID-19 and the proposed budget addresses. So I'm starting this off because this can be the beginning of a one-page info. So if Kevin wants to go first, that would be great.
I didn't want to go first, but I'll go first.
Sorry.
Thank you, Kevin.
So I am, if I'm hearing if the question is, you know, the one page and what's the attention grabber, I personally, I need more time to think that through. Just in terms of, I do feel like some of the people on this side of the call that we need are not here right now. You know, we have students who are on the board that, quite frankly, I don't feel like we leverage enough. And if we want to appeal to the public, I feel like they should be partners in this space with us right now. They are more than capable of helping us, you know, make inroads into the community. You know, I heard the point made earlier about translation. And, you know, we could have kids speaking in kid terms to other kids, but at the same time appealing to families around this community. And so I think that's very important, and I don't think we should be leaving that out. Just in terms of audiences, and Kate, I don't know if you're ready for this part of the conversation, but you know, the teachers they've already supported us like publicly, And I think it's important to capitalize on that support and make sure we're in front of them and walking them through the rationale behind these budget ideas. You know, we've had an opportunity to make this presentation to admin, but you know, we have an entire troop force out there who we also need to communicate with and make them aware of the supports that we, you know, we want them to know exactly what they're fighting for, and help them understand why we've, you know, landed on these certain positions to help move their work. And you know, and then of course there are other, you know, other groups that I feel like it's important for us to get in front of, you know, without going through all of those details. But you know, there's a part of me that's smiling as we're talking tonight because I'm thinking to myself, as Rich opened up earlier, you know, we have some really, really big plans ahead. And if we don't get everything we need in this budget, I feel like that's okay. Don't get me wrong, I want every penny that's in this budget. But we really need to plant the seeds and continue to educate the community because we have some huge asks coming. Like there are some huge asks coming our way. And so if we can continue to go out and educate this community about the budget process, and to Rich's point earlier, listen, we just approved the bond in this city. We need to educate the community and say, listen, you just approved the bond. And now to make that work move forward, now this is the support that we need from you. But a lot of folks can't even necessarily connect those dots because they don't understand the connections between that work. And, you know, going to Amy's point that she made earlier, you know, I just need some talking points to get in front of. And I think, you know, Ann does an amazing job helping to land and identify the groups to talk to. And I know that because I've been in front of those groups with Ann. But one group we haven't talked to specifically, and that's the group that doesn't have kids in our school system. And we also need to get in front of them, right? And so whether that's Amy and I and, you know, Rich, Janelli and Courtney, or, you know, whoever the people are, the players are, and probably a kid with us. But we also need to be in front of that group and just remind them of why it's so important for their property values, like this is an investment in their community, and walk them through the benefits of. And again, we may not win right now, but I do feel like it's important to educate the entire community of the direction of Danbury Public Schools, everything that's been started with the POG work, everything that's been started with the Danbury Academy, or whatever we're going to call it. Like we need to communicate and educate the community, Kate. And you made that point early, and it's like resonating with me, you know, and I know Amy's an educator. So like we're ready, like just give us our lesson plan. We're ready. We can go out there and do it. So I just wanted to just make sure I started with those things, but I really feel strongly part of the translator people who need to be on this team. We have students on the board who are so capable. I would love if they could be in this space with us and talking strategy and talk about how to get in front of their peers, but also how to get in front of the public.
And also if like, and just because that reminded me of something, Kevin, because when I was in peer leadership at DHS, I know we needed a ton of community service hours. And if we're just looking for troops that can help us, I know that's another good resource. And those are equally, you know, capable students, but totally, we need the BOG and everybody that's at those meetings. They should be here too, because they're wealths of knowledge for sure.
PLTI, as Kevin and I talked about, is another group that is an excellent group. So let's say for starters, for like, you know, and you want to go before, or do you want to?
Sure. No, what I was doing was, you know, using those emotions that we just spoke about. So, you know, we heard our families during COVID-19, the proposed budget addresses, and it's just a simple table that we can later put in that infograph. Your concerns about your child's social emotional development, and therefore placing climate schedule specialists will provide targeted support for your child. High level of students who attend college, the work that needs to be done around the NEAS accreditation, you know, and then explain what that is. Huge movement in town right now about strengthening the ESL services. And then that this budget supports additional PSYOP and ESL teachers. You're concerned that students aren't engaged, alternative programs that engage students. And then we can put down exactly what those pieces are in the budget to say we've addressed your concerns. And then I totally agree with Kevin is bringing in some of these kids. I think you know, if we can get them to do some of this marketing that we need done, and then target, I think we can't leave out our elderly population, our older population in town, and get on some of these shows on Channel 23 that they offer, that are need some more education about what this budget is going to do for them, and then of course the younger population as well. Yeah.
Do we want to take sort of steps to say, okay, what is going to be done in a certain sequence, so that at the next meeting, you know, we can come back. For example, you know, as Kevin said, let's just say to develop the hot button items, or as I call hot button items, where he needs more time and other people to collaborate. With that being said, there will be other aspects of fixing up the budget to coordinate with other individuals to express their teachers or guidance counselors to express their points of view, people in the trenches to express their points of view on the budget. If we can come up with a couple of 3 tasks, you know, that we can get moving, and then at the next meeting, and when I say the next meeting, we don't have to wait 2 weeks, because time's of the essence here. So
Yeah,
you know,
I was
to the group is how the frequency, you know, the frequency of which we can meet. It may be other meetings, maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes just to polish up and move ahead. But at least we can get something done, check off, you know, what we've accomplished today, and meet again and say, okay, you know, we've done this. You know, and deal out the assignments to whoever wants to do it. And then we report back in a short period of time.
Yeah, Rich, I think that's a very good point, because I'm looking at what Courtney started posting in the chat, which is, you know, a rough sketch of what the timeline is here. You know, the mayor's going to be reviewing the budget through the 5th of March. You know, so that's, you know, our time is already ticking down. I think, you know, if we can leave this meeting with, you know, a couple action items, you know, so that the next meeting that we have, which you know, what I'm hoping is that we can kind of meet weekly for the time being. I don't expect that that's going to go on forever, but for these first few meetings, I think we need the consistency of a regular meeting. And I think for, you know, doing it in you know, in a weekly timeline is going to help us, you know, cross off the major tasks we need to get accomplished before we're actually starting to push this message out. We need to do that quickly and come up with that plan quickly, because we need to take advantage of whatever time we have left to do that education work before the budget comes down in April. That said, so I think that the 2 things that we need to think about, and this is what I would ask of the group, and I certainly welcome your feedback about, you know, whether or not you are in agreement. I think it would be great for each one of us to come up with a list of hot button items, a minimum of 5 points that you think are really important to make. And if there are others, absolutely add them to the list. But I think it would be good to see what each of us important from their perspective. And I think also, you know, something else to think about are the communities that you are currently connected to, where you might be able to do some outreach work. I think would be helpful. And you know, certainly for Kevin, for you, and for you, Anne, you know, I know you guys are in touch with a lot of different communities. So you know, whatever groups you think, you know, we can. Maybe the better way to put it is, if you can come up with your full list, and we can figure out, you know, sort of what our order of operations is going to be for approaching each of these different groups. Obviously, Kevin, speaking to your point earlier, you know, getting our students engaged in this process early on allows us to spread that message further. So, you know, we can prioritize having an audience with that group, you know, earlier.
So Kate, we're using, Kevin and I actually worked on that today, coming up with a group, with a list of groups that we can meet with, that we already have contacts with. That's a really easy part.
Okay,
for us to
great.
do. And so, you know, absolutely, we can get that done. The other piece is to think about educating some of the students to be part of that presentation.
Mhm.
I think that, you know, who are going to be the people that are really going to be able to carry that message forward. And those of us that are in the school can certainly recognize some students that'll be really, really good at that.
And would you suggest, based on that thought, once you select the students, that maybe Courtney goes through and make the presentation to the budget to them, so we get they're up to speed on everything we had, and they could share the same feelings or the opinions?
I'm not sure that the students would address the fiscal budget side of it so much, but more talk to their experiences about why something like that is important to them and
Yeah.
to families, and please, and then talk about, you know, and please, you know, vote for this budget, help us, you know, move this budget through the city so that I can keep getting those services.
Yeah, like I was wondering, and what your thoughts are about
Courtney, we're losing you. I don't know if it's
something
my
like a
internet.
civic engagement lesson. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah,
Okay, like a civic engagement project. So much like those kids who got out the vote, you know, I could very briefly help you to just teach them about when the budget happens,
great.
you know, just that kind of like, so that they know like, and how you can be there and impact it with a voice.
Mhm.
So whether, you know, whatever interests you, here's when the budget happens, here's how the sausage gets made, and here's how it gets presented to the public.
Yeah.
You know, we could develop something like that real quick for the kids to
Mhm.
get a civic engagement lesson and learn in that way too.
Yeah,
And those
that would
kids
be
that
great.
did that get out the vote and they got that award, how amazing, you
Yeah.
know.
And to your point, Dan, so I'm a very simple person. I got to connect or illustrate my own mind the connection here. But would something be where there's a services that, I'm going to put it the best way I can, that are inadequate in the district to the kids? And I'm going to pick on something, let's say guidance counselors, where if that's an issue where the student feels they're not being serviced, or something along those lines, so that they, and to your point, they can talk about that, and then we can cover that, is to say, okay, you know, the funding on this is why we need X number of dollars for this,
Right.
or for these particular people. Okay, I just want to be able to figure out my own mind how things would work. I'm sort of a control freak, as you can hear, so I'm sorry. But I have a lot of passion for this. I mean, it's I get excited about this, you know, and if I were employed by the Board of Ed, I'd probably get fired because I shoot my mouth off too much. But there's a lot of passion I have, and I just don't understand why it's so hard. I understand the dollars and cents, and I'm retired now. I'm not making the big salaries I was making before, but still, there's a value in education. And then when I sit back and I listen to the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on political campaigns, you know, as if there's no end to money, and we're struggling for this. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. It's so frustrating. You know, it's like the money's gushing out here and just being wasted in the ocean, and where they can make an investment in society, you got to pull teeth. It just seems to me diametrically opposite. So, but I'm just sorry that I get too emotional on it. And to the older audience, I could certainly, I know Lynn Waller, you know, hates to see me at this time of year, because I usually blow her audience when I say we need, you know, $10 million, and they all say, well, we're on a fixed income, you know, what's it do for me? I don't have kids in school. But, you know, I think the net result is we got to keep badgering that one, as in her point, she wants to sell her house, and the better the district, the more people are going to be champing to buy her house, as opposed to moving out of the district. So it's a good educational process too, as you said, to the different parts of the community that will benefit to this, and we have to show them how.
Well, and I think, to that point, Rich, I think doing the outreach to different parts of the community, whether or not they're going to be a receptive audience, is still important. So that we're not, we're making the effort to include people in the conversation. That's an important step, even if, we know that there's going to be a certain number of folks who are just, for whatever personal principles are not going to be supporting it. That conversation still needs to be had. And I think it's also about working on the larger cultural conversation about why public education is important.
So, Kate, I know I know we're getting close to the end here, but I just wanted to offer a little pushback on how to leverage the students, number one, and then wanted to get some clarification on your ask also in preparation for the next meeting. So Ann and I, and part of my pushback is to my colleague Ann, because Ann and I have been in meetings when talking about partnership with community, whether that's with parents, whether that's with kids, et cetera. And I think I was envisioning more, the kids are actually part of this process with us, right? We have kids on the board who are on the board of education, typically, and I feel like they should be part of this conversation and have full context, and then they interject and understand where they could be leveraged, their voice could be leveraged. I think I'm more comfortable with them telling us where they feel like this is where I feel like I can best support this, or whatever that might be or look like. And so I just want to offer that for the group consideration, because I think, quite frankly, we would benefit from their feedback. And as they get more comfortable in these discussions, I think we might just consider approaching this a little differently than we would have otherwise. And I feel like if we're just feeding them, then we may not have their
perspective.
Their perspective. That's right.
We have to use their gray matter. We need to
and their graphic
right,
knowledge too. Those
Yeah.
nice graphics. They're much better.
Could we then bring them in for the first part of the next meeting?
I would love to have them here. Cool.
Wait, now, we don't know if they want to be with us.
Just don't tell them.
We can extend the invitation, certainly.
Can we get a mothership dinner for them?
Right.
Yeah, that would get them in.
Yeah.
I will send you a pizza myself.
That's right. So Kate, is it? I know you had asked about kind of giving us some homework for the next meeting, but I'm wondering if maybe we can get some points, and Courtney, Ann, and I can get those points prior to the meeting, and then maybe we can have something for this group to consider, and maybe we can have something ready for this team to look at, based on the feedback from this group, and we can be a week ahead. If
So,
that's possible.
Kevin, what do you think about, we can't do this as an email thread, but what if, each of the committee members here was able to, and I don't know who that wants to be the point person for this, or if there is somebody who's willing to be the point person for this, but if each of the committee members here could send, their list of hot button items, and the audiences that they are in contact with already, to that point person, and then that could be consolidated into a single document that you could share with the students.
We all have their Gmail accounts through the district, right? So could a Google Doc work?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, yeah, let's make that easy.
Absolutely. Can that work also for everyone on this call?
Wait. I think I just want to be careful on how we share that for board action. When it's Google Doc, I think it's all great, but I'm a little worried about that.
Can we just send it to?
Yeah, it might not be a problem. It just hit me wrong. The caution's always been not to use kids, and that's not what you're doing. You're actually having the kids inform us. But I'm just worried about the Google Doc. Let's think about that. The other way to do it is, is to send information to the chair who can get it to Kara.
Right.
And it goes right to Kevin, and then he can get it to the kids, right? It comes from him, not from you, where it's back and forth, because then you're doing public business. I think you need to be careful, that's all.
Makes sense. That makes
Okay,
sense.
thanks, Dr. Sal.
Good to know.
Mhm.
But if they get it to Kara to Kevin, in the end, they could get the kids involved and get exactly what you would like and get them to the meeting prepared to kind of give us some ideas.
We send it to Kara to CC Kate. This way she's, could be in a loop. So I think that's a good idea. That'd be great.
So are you saying you want a point person still, like one of us, to collect the email from everybody, or we just go right to Kara?
I think Kara's gonna be the person that the information
Okay.
gets sent to. I would like to be CC'd on that, because I might just put my own document together and, that'll filter through Kara to Kevin, and then he can, interact
Okay.
with the students for some feedback. Can we set a day for that to happen? Because so first let's talk about when we want to meet next. I don't know if Thursday evenings generally work for this group.
It's
Or-
great for me. I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone else, though.
So Joe's good. Who else here?
I'm good except for next Thursday, but usually Thursday
Okay.
night for me.
I'm fine.
I'm saying this and I haven't even looked at my calendar, so I probably should do that. So that's the 18th. Is there a night that works better for you, Amy, next week?
You want to move it up to Wednesday?
The Wednesday would be okay for me. I don't know about everybody else.
Prior to the
We have a
board meeting.
policy meeting.
So I have policy next week.
Oh,
We have a policy meeting at 6. I don't know that I think these initial meetings are gonna run a little bit longer than an hour, so I'm reluctant to put on a night when we already have another meeting in effect. What about Tuesday, the 16th?
No, I can't. I've already booked 2 meetings.
Okay,
Yeah, Tuesday's bad. Tuesdays are bad.
Tuesday's no good, okay.
why
No,
don't you
but
just meet on a Thursday and I'll get my list in, but I mean, maybe
Okay,
just to go ahead if you're gonna keep it on Thursdays.
okay, and the good thing about it now is that we're posting these committee meetings on the YouTube channel, so you can always
Good.
kind of catch up there if you'd like.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so next Thursday at 6, I think we should be prepared to continue this conversation. If everybody could get something to Kara and CC me on that by, let's say, Monday, is that enough time, Kevin, for you to be able to?
We'll make it work.
We could try sooner. I mean, we could try, how about if we say Monday morning? We say Monday morning to get it to Kara, and that way she can hopefully turn it around to you by sometime later.
That's right, it's
on
Thursday
Monday.
night, okay.
Monday is a day off, but Kara doesn't mind working.
She's off tomorrow, right? Is
I
she
don't
off?
say that. She won't like me anymore.
We'll do it Sunday night.
Oh yeah, this is President's Day. That's right. Yeah.
We'll do it Sunday night.
Sure, Sunday night. Yeah.
Oh, you're a nice guy, Rich.
I love getting the homework assignments, though, Kate. I feel like I'm in a class right now.
No, it's good, it's good.
I
So
like
maybe move
it.
it forward.
We've got to
I
move
like
it
it.
forward, and we don't have a
Yeah.
lot of time here, guys. I want to be sensitive about that, even though the mayor's going to be reviewing this through March. The reality is, like, we have some education groundwork that has to take place. So I think, I'm also going to be assigning myself the task of working on like sort of a draft of, what the budget process is, from start to finish, once it leaves Board of Ed hands. So I'm going to bring that to start the conversation next week, about the information we need to include. That education needs to start happening sooner, much sooner rather than later, though. It's going to take time for us to disperse this message to the community. And, with keeping that in mind and keeping in mind that we'd like to get folks to that, the public hearings that are going to be happening in April after the initial budget presentation. And I don't think that they've worked out exactly how that's going to happen yet. So, we're going to have to kind of be a little bit nimble and flexible about, how we are encouraging people to participate. They can still send emails, to our mayor and our city council as well in advance of the presentation of the budget. So I just think, the more that we can build momentum for this, the better off we're going to be. All right, I think we're winding up here, but I'm wondering if anybody has any additional thoughts they want to impart to us before we make a motion to close this.
Can we just next Thursday night get some dates on the calendar when we'd like to meet with these different folks, just because we have focus groups going with the POG. I just want to make sure that we're not asking the same folks too many times. But also, you know, spring, if sports come back, families get busy again. And if we can get some ideas of dates that we want to do this work, to meet with the constituents and our stakeholders, and that would be wonderful.
Okay.
That's a good call, Ann.
Yeah.
I just put together my first Zoom happy hour.
Are we all invited, Rich?
Yeah, next Friday night.
You have to bring your own drinks though, sorry. All right. With that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.